Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the A Life Well Lived, a Physician's Guide to Wealth podcast, where we help you take control of your money so you can live a purposeful life. And today we have some epic guests with us. First and foremost, our keynote speaker, Mr. Jon Appino, who I had the pleasure of meeting through the Financial Residency podcast. Shout out to Dr. Tammy Kraus. Thank you so much for bringing us together. Jon is the founder of an incredible physician contract company called Contract Diagnostics. They have an epic program called Compensation RX, where they help you figure out if you're compensated accordingly, amongst a variety of other things that you'll learn more from Jon. And I haven't known Jon too long, a little over a year, but he's just been absolutely incredible and a huge advocate for us in our business. So thank you for being here. And then we have another incredible guest, my business partner, closest friend, mentor when I was a broke, insecure 22-year-old getting into this business. I'd be nothing without you, Mr. Jeff McPherson, who I always have to include. He is a CFP, right? So he's probably smarter than both Jon and I combined, perhaps. No, but Jon is the go-to for today. And today we have a really, really fun topic for everybody. And this should be maybe a 2-part series. It might turn into a 4-part series, maybe 10. Who knows what's going to happen? We're going to focus on first attending physician contracts, some horror stories, mistakes, all the fun stuff involved. So thank you both so much for being here, and this is going to be great.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. I love doing this stuff, and I can feel the energy and the juice already. So I can't wait to get into this stuff and have some fun, share some stories, and part one of what might be a 100 series episode.
I hope so.
We'll try to be succinct with my answers. So that's pretty good.
I think you just got to let it flow. So we thought it would be fun, Jon, to maybe start just to really grab the attention of the audience. Maybe start with a horror story. Have you had any recent horror stories? I know I'm putting you on the spot right now, of like a first-year attending and their contract.
Yeah. So I'd love to talk success stories, but I know the horror stories are sometimes what people learn from. What's the saying? I tell my 12-year-old son, walk me through it if you heard this one. What is it? A smart man or a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. Right? A smart man learns from their own mistakes, or woman, of course. And a fool learns from nothing, right? So, if you can learn from someone else's mistakes, that makes you wise, right? And so I don't love telling horror stories, but I like telling them because I feel like other people can use these as how not to make bad decisions on their own. So I'll try and be succinct here. So this is an OB-GYN physician. Gal graduates, takes a job in Baltimore, a private practice OB group, making $230,000 a year. Private practice doesn't pay as much as a hospital employed position. She's only going to be there for a year. Maybe it was a year and a half, 2 years. She had a boyfriend or a spouse or somebody who was finishing a fellowship. And she said, I'm just going to be here for 2 years. Not too worried about the money. I'm just going to work, take a decent amount of call, learn a little bit. And then I'll move later on with him back to Texas or wherever it was. So it's only just a year contract. Didn't have it reviewed. Okay. And she calls us. She says, hey, I'm transitioning down to whatever, Texas or Florida. I forget where it was. And can you look at that contract? Of course, that's what we do every day, all day. We've done it for 14 years. So we said, yes. And I said, but you're in a job now. Do you know how to get out? And she said, I think it's just easy. I don't know. I didn't have anybody look at it. And so I said, if you want me to look at it, we have a quick, cheap package. We could do a termination review. So we did. And she was right. She had to give whatever it was, 60 or 90 days notice. So she was right. But she also had to buy her tail insurance, and she didn't know. And I had to call her and say, hey, you realize you need to buy tail insurance? And she said, no. And what is that? And I'd explained to her that tail insurance, what it was, and how she had to pay it, and how she had to have it before she could take her next job, because in the contract that we reviewed for her next job, it said that she had to prove prior acts. So she had to prove that she had it. And of course, her contract was obligating her to buy it, or the practice would buy it for her and bill her. So she went and got some quotes, and the charge for her malpractice tail insurance was somewhere like $140,000. Okay. So So picture this, you're a year and a half out of training, right? You're living in a high cost of living area like Baltimore. You're making $230,000, trying to pay some loans and pay the rent on your apartment. You haven't saved up much money, if at all, let alone 100 plus grand. And you get a bill for 140, 150 grand, whatever it was. And you can't finance tail insurance, right? It's not like you can take it away if you don't pay your charge. Oh, I had to deliver this news. And it was one of those situations where had she just given whoever, us or somebody, a couple $100, right, to look at the contract, they would have told her and said, look, why don't you just go take an academic job for a year or two, flush out and take, because they'll have malpractice covered. But she didn't get that guidance because she didn't have it reviewed, because she's like, it's just my first job. I'm not going to have it reviewed. It's just a year. I don't care about the compensation. I'm not going to even negotiate it. I just need a job for a year to make a little bit of money. And it is a bad deal. Bad deal. And you talk about financial dollars and cents all day long, right? Think of having a client who's a couple of years, who is a year or two out of their training as an attending. They're in debt 200-300 grand from medical debt, and they just got a bill for 140 grand that they maybe have 8 grand in the bank. So
Wow.
Not a good situation. So let's learn from that, and everybody understand if you need to buy your tail insurance or not. You can read the verbiage. Do you need to buy tail insurance? Yes or no on the contract, but it might not be that simple and clear. And for a few $100, you can have somebody, us or somebody else, look at the contract and very clearly say what the contract says. Because if there's that small word, if, which we're seeing in contracts more and more, if, then that, right? And that could just change everything. So it's important to understand all of your obligations, especially your tail provision.
Wow. That is indeed a horror story. All listeners out there become wise from hearing that. And one thing I forgot to say in my intro, I was just so excited, I jumped right in, is, all the people in society that we like envy, whether it's a superstar athlete or Beyonce or whatever, right? They surround themselves with a capable team to help them complete their mission in life. And you deserve to surround yourself as a physician, because you are highly paid for your skill set and what you do, with a capable team to help you complete the mission. Contract review is a huge part of that. You should review your contract like a freaking superstar athlete. Like, I know it's not millions and millions, but I forgot to say that.
It can be.
I wanted to throw that.
It can be. We're doing an EP deal right now, 810 grand guaranteed for 3 years, with a $50,000, signing bonus and 20,000 for relocation and some retention bonuses and RVUs. It's a multi-million-dollar contract that this guy signed. We've done 7-figure contracts for 3 years, so lots of times they are multi-million-dollar contracts. Even if you're a primary care doc making 2.25, and you're signing this thing, you're planning on being there for a long time, that's a big deal, so these things are important. I think having a great team to surround yourself from a tax mitigation and a financial and income protection and a contract review. And when you have a contract review, have your compensation checked up, no different than, I'm 46 years old and I've got, I have an accountant and I have a guy that helps me with finances. I have a doctor that helps me with my health. I have podcasters that I listen to for advice on what to eat and how to exercise and, how to be a good parent is another, aspect of my life. And so, I've surrounded myself with really good people, and I think everybody should, physicians, part of that crew.
Absolutely. And I talk about in the show often. I love that you said that. If you Google the wheel of life for all the listeners out there, there's like 8 spokes on it. And a lot of it's like family, work, relationships, physical health, mental health. You can take a quiz and see where you're lacking. And then normally when I do it, I'm always lacking somewhere. I'm always out of alignment. I double down on that skill and how I can improve it. Like you said, books, podcasts, trainings, hiring someone, whatever it is. Didn't expect to go down this path, but 100% agree with it.
Yeah, 1% better every day. There's a book about that, but I can't decide. I can't remember which it is. We can talk about that in episode 12.
Yeah, it's compounding, not compounding interest, but compounding growth of you as a human.
Exactly.
Just 1% a day. So jumping into some contract fundamentals. What are some of the biggest mistakes residents and fellows, so physicians in training, make when signing and negotiating their first?
Some of the mistakes. I think it's not asking questions or not having good questions to ask. I think, sometimes they're just told this is non-negotiable, so they won't have anybody review it. But even if it's non-negotiable, it doesn't mean that there aren't 100 questions that you should ask. So maybe the contract's non-negotiable, they won't change anything. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to ask them a lot of questions about call and how call changes if you have, colleagues that leave. The compensation is non-negotiable. Okay. Doesn't mean that I can't ask them how they set compensation, how it changes over time. What are your expectations of me for RVUs or for collections? How do I get block time in the OR so I can get these cases done? What happens if I need to shift more block time and less clinic time? How is that handled? What about nurse practitioners or PAs? What kind of, what's the policy around charting and getting my charges in? I mean, there's so many questions that you can ask on any contract, whether it's negotiable or not. I think anybody who's not asking a ton of questions is making a bad decision. Again, whether that's, can you change this, or can I have this, or can you explain to me this, or can you clarify that? I think not asking lots and lots and lots of questions is something that a lot of folks miss. And having the right questions, no different. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so if I question somebody about why their knee hurts, I'm not going to do the best job. I can say, how does it hurt? And does it hurt if I poke you here? And is it chronic or dull or level 10 or level 2? I'm not an orthopedic surgeon. I can't evaluate somebody on that, but an orthopedic surgeon can, or a primary care doc can, to see what they should do with you. And it's no different. Having good questions for the right person at the right time is really valuable. And I think a lot of people don't take the time to ask those questions of that person because they don't know what the questions are. So I think that's one of the main mistakes that a lot of people make, is just not asking the right questions.
Yeah, and I think you just went through a great list of questions. And I think I find too, and I've had conversations with clients, it's a lot of times like don't bite the hand that feeds you, right? Even if they're a little further along. Like I've talked to some clients even about your program, Compensation RX, and they're like, oh yeah, a lot of other, they hear the horror stories of physicians trying to negotiate and just getting completely shut down.
Yeah.
Engage in that. So I think taking the approach of just, I want to brute force go in, knock on the door, and negotiate my contract versus having a cordial conversation and asking great questions.
Yeah. And that's why, we talk to employers all the time for our physician clients. And, and sometimes the physician's like, well, how are they going to take this? Are they going to get pissed? Are they going to take it okay? The employers love working with us because we don't just send red line copies over of a non-negotiable contract. We ask really good questions that are in the best interest of all the parties to understand. I think that as long as expectations are clear, so what's the doc going to do for the employer? What's the employer going to do for the doc? As long as the expectations are crystal clear from both of them, then hopefully it works out. It's a great position. Long-term, everybody wins. The hospital wins, physician wins if they want long-term. The patients win, the community wins. We don't win because we don't get to review another contract for them every other year because it's a crappy job, but that's okay. That's not why we're here. We're here to help. And so I love when it's a win-win for everybody. I think that's when the expectations are crystal clear from both ends.
Yep, absolutely. Love that answer. And Jeff, were you going to say something?
No, well, I wasn't going to jump in or anything. When listening to what you were saying, John, I think we had, one really, I think, a great success story about a year ago with a surgeon that was transitioning out of a fellowship and signing the first attending contract, and she had a real, long journey. She was an active duty surgeon, civilian residency after that, and then a fellowship in surgical breast oncology. So heavily specialized and was looking at really getting more of a work-life balance. As hard as that is to imagine for a physician, right? She was hopeful to find a job that would give her a work-life balance, and she found a great opportunity. But then when it came time to evaluate the actual contract that was laid in front of her, there was language in there saying that she was still going to have to take, like trauma call and still maintain somewhat of that general surgeon hat that she'd still need to wear a little bit, maybe like 2 weekends a month or something like that. And was able to actually go back and have that removed and have her like have that expectation conversation that you're talking about, John, about, hey, my role here is a surgeon, like a breast oncologist. And she was able to get that. And she has she works, basically like a normal Monday through Friday job, and has her nights and weekends reserved for being a human being. And she's able to recharge her battery, and she loves being a doctor again. So I think just having the right questions to ask, and having knowing how to go and approach and gain ground. She had some coaching along how to do that tactfully, and it worked out really great for her, and her life is very well balanced right now. So it is cool if you can do it and have some wins like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I love that, especially as we always talk about physician burnout rates being so high. And, it just takes a couple of questions and a little intentionality. And of course, every time you do it, we all get out of our comfort zone, right? Doing something that requires change and potential, maybe a little bit of conflict, right? A little bit of candor. But it's kind of just getting through that fear and getting to the other side of it. And then that's a wonderful success story that, Jeff just shared of what is potentially possible. So if you're listening right now, I'm always all about action items, right? So pull out your notes app, pen, piece of paper, whatever. Based on what you've heard so far, what's something you can take action on in the next 24 hours? That's my challenge for you. And if you do it, send us an email, journey@iamwealth.com. Let us know how it goes. We'd love to hear some great feedback on that. I'll share it with John as well. John, what are some of the maybe top 1, 2, 3 clauses that every new attending should scrutinize before signing or just consider closely?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, I tell everybody, again, expectations, like we said before, I tell everybody that you trade time for money, right? Both of those things should be very clear. How much time are you going to give them? How much money are they going to give you? So it's not on the surface as easy, but, time that you're going to give them, well, what's your schedule? What happens if people leave, right? What about call? If you're on multiple staffs, different hospitals, does that mean multiple call obligations? What's the policies? What are the bylaws of the institution? What if your colleagues leave? Are you supervising nurse practitioners? Are the patient care hours 36 per week or 40 or minimum of 40? Can they add on patients? Do you get a lunch break? Is there outreach clinic, in which case you could be driving 40 minutes or an hour? I mean, we could go on and on and on about what your expectation is to them and your time, right? It's not just 40 hours a week, full time. Part-time. No. It's a lot of stuff to unpack in the expectation that they have of you, right? Their expectation in the contract may say you'll work full-time, defined as blank, right? 40 hours. But their head might say, well, full-time, well, you're a doctor. So you'll work 24/7 because that's what you signed up for. You're a doctor, right? And so we need to tease that out if that's what their expectation is, and that's not lining up with yours. And then the other side, and so again, we can go into outreach and drive and location and multiple sites and block time in the OR and clinic time and admin time and committee meetings and everything else. And then the reverse is, what do you expect from them? Well, you expect them to pay you, right? So compensation, bonus, what's taxed, what's not, how benefits roll into that, right? How much time off do you get? What's the CME policy? Are the fees included? So you might have $3,500 a year for CME. Fantastic. Some places include your DEA and your licensing and your credentialing fees and state association fees out of that $3,500. Others say, no, you have $3,500 for education. Everything else, all the fees are on top. Good to know that. Other places, they might be working with a physician right now. They were told 6 weeks of vacation, 30 days, right? They've been there for a year and a half. They show up, it sure is 6 weeks, but it's 6 weeks less 3 days of sick, less 9 or 8 holidays, like less the CME time. So it's 6 weeks, but not plus holidays, not plus sick time, not plus CME. It's 30 days in total. So it's important to understand the benefits, of course, disability insurance and the 401k or the 457 or if it's a private practice, they've got a cash balance or a profit sharing plan. If they got an old school pension, it's important to understand the benefits because that's part of the expectation that you have of them, right? How much money will you pay me? What's my total compensation package like? So to break it down out of the 3 things, if I've only got 3, one is, your schedule, right? Your time expectation that they will expect of you. And then, of course, knowing that we can't predict the future, what happens if? My colleague has a baby. My other colleague retires early. You hire 3 more people. You buy another hospital. You want to open an outreach, etc. You hire nurse practitioners, on and on and on. Then the other thing is important is money, compensation, right? I mean, you spend a lot of time training yourself to arm yourself with a very, 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 very valuable skill set. So what will they pay you for that? Not just in base salary, but total. And then the third thing I would throw in there is how to get out, right? And I would put a couple things in there, not single clauses, but a couple things. So termination, can you terminate? A lot of contracts these days, there's restrictions on termination from the physician's end, okay? Important to know. I think employers are using this as a retention strategy with the physician shortage coming up, but that's a different topic. The other thing, of course, tail insurance, do you have to buy it or not? And then restrictive covenants. So, your time, your money, and then how do you get out of the thing if it doesn't work? Those are the 3 areas, if you will. I would say more than 3 clauses, but 3 areas. I'll say it makes it easier for me.
Are there any more? I heard you mention if we're only focusing on 3, are there any more, like 1 or 2, like key that you love talking about or see?
Yeah, I mean, well, what's really popular now, guys? You know this. It's physicians want 1099 income. I'm not a CPA, but when you have 1099 income, you're flexible on what you do with the income as far as tax mitigation. We not anymore. We were working with a neurosurgeon, probably one of the most successful neurosurgeons I've seen in my 14 years. You're making $2.4 million a year, and he was a W-2 employee, no side income. All he could do is save 23 grand in a 401k tax-free. Everything else, right? Where you got a guy making $2 million as 1099. And again, I'm not a tax guy, but all the things that they could take advantage of the tax code, they could get that income instead of down to, 24,000 and change, they can get it down to $1 million potentially, right? With cash balance plans and layover profit sharing plans and legitimate business expenses and, QBIs and everything. So physicians want 1099 income. However, most contracts prohibit external activities or outside activities. A lot of contracts will talk about exclusivity, right? So you are exclusive to us. We own your medical work. So anything you do medically is for us. And if you want to get something on the outside going, you got to ask us. And a lot of employers will say no in certain situations. Some contracts say your professional services, anything outside for professional services, which we assume to mean, physician, doctor work, needs to get our permission. Some contracts say anything outside needs our permission. So they can't even open a taco shop, or sell books on Amazon or something. They got to get permission on everything, no matter if it's physician related or not. And so I would say another big thing that people should pay attention to and discuss up front and have good questions up front is exclusivity clauses, outside activity clauses. They could be listed as a non-compete, right? During the employment, it could be a non-compete if you can't go to work for other people, or a restrictive covenant, as it may be called in the contract. So, there's all kinds of things that I would bring a physician's attention to that they may overlook. Of course, I can go take telehealth jobs. Of course, I could take calls somewhere else as long as I'm not on call here. No, maybe you can't. Maybe you can't even do that lecture for a pharmaceutical company and make a couple of grand to have a good steak and a glass of wine. So it's important to understand what the rules are on their contracts, because they may be prohibited from doing anything outside and earning 1099 income, which a lot of people want. I think the last stat that I saw showed like 37% of physicians have 1099 income, and I'm assuming that the vast majority are probably doing it without having approval from their employer. Something else.
That's very interesting.
Again, and coming back to termination. Yeah, coming back to termination, that could be grounds for termination for a cause, depending on how it goes. And then that could default a whole bunch of other things. They lose their bonus, they have to buy tail insurance, the non-compete's in effect. I mean, there could be all kinds of downstream effects that happen because of that. Plus, it's on your record. Not that I think any employer wants to terminate a physician for a cause. I don't think they would over something as small as that, but you never know. So something for everyone to keep in mind. Might get overlooked by a lot of people. you know as well as I do, a doctor gets their contract and they go, how much money is it? Awesome. I'm sorry. But there's lots more to it.
Yeah.
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 And like you said, I think it comes down to asking those great questions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. One thing
Jeff,
that you just said, like,
you got that. So you got that look
you
on
could
you
just
got
like
that
read
look
my
on your
body
face.
language.
Yeah,
It's
you're ready. Go.
everything. So John, yeah, when you're talking about there's definitely some ambiguity that we're seeing with those types of contracts where people are seeing the language in there, that, you know, you like if somebody wants to pick up locums work, right, outside their normal W-2 because they have
Yeah.
like the capacity, and a lot of the young docs that we see, they just come, out of training and within kind of in a full sprint. They want to pay off their loans, they want to play catch up on retirement, they want to start building and accumulating, and maybe their life outside of work isn't as I guess busy as it evolves to be over time. And they see in their contract that language that says you can't pursue this without the express permission of the employer, and so it's kind of gray, right? And I don't know how much of that is intentional or not, but we've seen people that have been in that spot where they,
Mm-hmm.
and then you also, it's like the what ifs where somebody comes in and they're getting a ton of extra shifts because maybe they're a little bit short staffed at the time and they're used to making like an extra 100 grand and just picking up extra shifts. And then as they start hiring new colleagues on, that those extra shifts just are diminished down to basically nothing. And so they're there kind of just working their normal base salary, and there's nothing extra to pick up. And so they have this extra time on their hands. They want to go work, and because they have they have the skill set to go and perform their services anywhere, really. But we've seen those types of like permission seeking activities go on for longer than a year. Ultimately, like they're just like sitting there and twiddling their thumbs, waiting to see like if they're going to get the blessing to go out and do the work. And if you could just have the conversations to have clear expectations of what does this mean, like you said, tease out like what if some of these shifts dwindle away, and then if I want to pursue locums work and pick up some 1099, how does that work? What's a timeline realistically for me to get permission? Because we haven't seen anybody in that situation actually get it over the finish line. Really?
Wow. Yeah. I mean, to me, again, we actually just had a physician that turned down the job because
Yeah.
we were doing the negotiation for them, and she had 3 different things that she was doing on the outside already, and she had good income from each one of them, and she liked the situation, she liked the company, she thought it was a benefit to the patients, to the companies, to herself, to the hospital. And her new hospital facility said, no, we're not going to do that. We think there's conflict of interest there. She said, there's no conflict. Here's why, here's how, here's history. And they said, no, you can't do that if you come here. And so she said, jump in a lake. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
But again, if she wouldn't have asked, if she would have just shown up, and then they would have been like, who's this rep here or individual here? Why are you on this YouTube channel or whatever it was? She could have gotten fired. Sometimes having a contract reviewed and going through the process and asking the questions, you don't take the job. And that some people think that that's a waste of money. No, it's a good investment. We prevented you from making a bad decision, as it may be. And so, yeah, I think those processes are good. But most of the time, my assumption, if you listen, unless you're still young and building a business or a practice, as it may be, that the facilities, they just want to know, one, that's not in any conflict of interest with them, right? It's in your spare time, and that you have separate malpractice insurance. And I've seen that as long as you can provide those 3 things, most of them don't have a problem with it. But if something changes, then of course they might. So I think, again, maybe it matters how you roll it out to them. If you say, I'm going to do this, or if it's like, hey, here's what I'm doing, here's the risk mitigation protocol, here's why you won't be on the front page of the paper, here's why it's important to me, here's how it benefits the patients. I think maybe it has a higher chance of going through.
Yeah. And I think where we see it taking the longest, painfully long, is where the bigger the health system in that scenario, the more bureaucratic it can be, and the slower things take to actually progress.
Yeah.
But
Which again,
I think that lends itself though to having.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think it lends itself to having somebody to be able to say, like, if you are to present the case, like here's how to present your case, right?
Yeah.
So,
and again, like if you're doing your due diligence on the contract before you've signed it, and you say, what's the policy for outside activities? And they say, well, you just fill in this form and we let you know. Okay. You can stop there, or you can say, well, who approves the forms?
Yeah.
Well, I do. Oh, okay. Well, is there anything you always approve? Is there anything
Right.
you always deny? Um, okay, well, I do this. Do you think that'd be cool? If not, why? You know, oh no, I don't. I put it in a file and it goes to the legal committee or whatever. Okay, great. Can I get their message or their emails? I'd like to call them or message them and say, look, hey guys, I'm thinking about joining you. This is really important to me. I'd like to get pre-approval for this, which we do all the time, is get pre-approval for something. So we get a letter now saying you can do this so long as you've got malpractice, so long as it's in your spare time, so long as it's outside of the non-compete or there are no conflicts of interest, whether it's the taco shop or whether it's, doing some telehealth on the weekend.
Yeah. I mean, there's another set of just great questions to ask. And it's just having a roadmap. I mean, right?
It is.
What's your favorite taco?
I was gonna say it's Taco Tuesday. I'm getting hungry. Margarita doesn't sound bad. It's 11:30 a.m. though, so probably shouldn't do that.
I'm like a chicken taco. Like depends on where I'm at. Soft shell, hard shell. Like a lot of salsa, not a lot of cheese, a little bit of guac, a little spice. Nothing too crazy.
There was
I gotta
a
give.
place. Go ahead.
So I got to give a special shout out. I've eaten there with Jeff before to Mama Lou's up in Traverse City. They got kind of like the new age, like modern tacos, little, small shells, but they're a little like fancier. But they got a carne asada, and I don't even know how they do it. But shout out to my Mama Lou's crew up there. But you can't beat a good street taco either. You can't beat just like a good classic. I think I had the best of my life in California at a friend's like wedding rehearsal dinner the night before.
Yeah.
They just brought someone in, and it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Jeff, how about you, man? Taco Tuesday.
I mean, I just RIP to the crawfish taco that they used to make at Donkey here in Grand Rapids. That was the real deal right there. And they took it off the menu probably like 5 years ago. And it's just, burned into my soul. That taco is so good, man. Unfortunately, we'll probably never have it again unless you try to make a Bush League version at home or something.
I can recruit some New Orleans friends for that one, Jeff. So we might be able to do it. We might be able to. If they were good with their marketing, they'd do like the scarcity and urgency and like release it for like 2 weeks at a time. And
yeah, like the McRib, right? Just bring it back. Everybody loves a McRib.
Yeah. That's hilarious. I could talk about tacos all day, but John, one quick question that I was inspired by the clauses question is when you're talking about people's like their expectations of like time and call schedule and everything. I mean, there's so many expectations, right? And everything you just said in the last answer. How many physicians do you, and maybe this is hard to say, but maybe it's like none or very little, like are actually aware of all those details in their contract when you meet with them regarding like, is it pretty minimal, would you say?
No. Again, I don't think people go through it with that level of detail. Some, and you can tell, some are just, some of these physician scientists, they're just hyper detailed, I mean, I'm sure they're the ones that dig into the studies and they're looking at the confidence intervals and which is significant and, and why this one patient population didn't respond to a certain dose of a certain therapeutic and, and they're just dialed into data and science. And those are the really, really high detailed people. And other people are like, I don't know, it's good money. What do you think? I like them. They seem cool. And it's more of like a feeling kind of thing. And so, whether you're the detail person, it's good to know how not to ask too many questions, right? And if you're the high level person, it's making sure that you have like, the right questions. But yeah, we would, we see a lot of people that, they haven't read the contract. They just send it to us or they say, I looked at it. It looks good. Just looking for a second set of eyes. Not to joke, but it's like me, like looking at like a rash and saying, I don't know, it looks fine. I think it's going to go away, but I don't know. I might probably still have a doctor look at it. Or like I look at my lab report, I'm like, I don't know, it looks good. Maybe I should have my functional doctor look at it, or like a longevity guy say, look, John, you're on the path to living the way you want to, or you're not, taking into account genetics and family history and biomarkers and, and everything else. So there's so much importance by just having a second set of eyes on everything, whether it's, a knee that you need to get surgery on, or whether it's, your taxes sometimes, or whether it's, is your contract fair enough, or, I don't know, what's the mortgage rate on my house, or how much should I pay for disability insurance? I mean, you're going to get lots of quotes on that kind of stuff. You should probably get, at least your opinion and somebody else's on your contract.
100% agree with that. And no, that was a great answer. And I think it, just depends on, like you said, the personality of the person. But at the end of the day, surround yourself with a capable team, right? It's like I just got a new functional medicine doctor, and it's just been such a game changer. So I love that you brought that up too. So I know we're almost at the 40-minute marker here. We have probably 2 minutes and 30 seconds left.
Let's get some more in.
I want to make sure people know where they can find you. I also want to leave the audience on a cliffhanger to make sure they listen to the next one. But is there any, I was going to ask, like, when should, I know a lot of residents and fellows, physicians in training, maybe already just signed their first contract already, or they're getting close. A lot might be doing it again this fall, into the winter next year. I was going to ask when to start the conversation, or if some have already signed, how they should approach the conversation after they've signed. If we don't have enough time for that, we can leave a cliffhanger too. If there's anything else you want to share.
No, I think the earlier, the better that they contact a firm like Contract Diagnostics. And you can find us, you Google us, we're everywhere. Contract Diagnostics is the website. I mean, you can text us, you can email us, you can you call the 800 number on the phone. Jan picks up in Kansas City, and Jan knows everything, and Jan's super nice. So you don't get some random person or some automated AI bot that's going to pretend to know the answer but not. I mean, you get Jan, and Jan can send you to me if they want to. So we're easy to find. But when should a physician look for a job? I don't know. We're doing 2020. It's April of 25. We're doing 2027 deals already. We're doing lots of 26 deals already. We're still flushing through a lot of 25 deals for people who are starting, finishing in June, starting in August, September-ish or so. And I think a lot of people delayed looking for jobs this year. And so our busy season is usually December through March. And, we've been heating up. We had a good, amazing February. March was good. And it's only April 1st, 10:30 in the morning, but we've had a ton of signups already today. So, so I think people can look for a job whenever they feel ready. But when to engage a firm like Contract Diagnostics, I say earlier rather than later. We're flat fee. So we get paid the same amount of money whether you call us with a letter of intent, if you call us before the letter of intent, you call us when you're interviewing, or you call us right before you're going to sign tomorrow. We get paid the same. So, we make less money if you call us early. But I say call us early. Get us on board with a letter of intent. Let us help you with don't sign a letter of intent until we or somebody else takes a peek at it, gives you guidance on it. I think getting us involved too early is better than too late. And one thing, people sometimes they just call us, they're shopping around or they want to see what we charge or whatever. And then they sign up I tell them sign up now for a package, because then they get the compensation data. And then they can take that compensation data on their interviews, and they know, okay, I don't want you talking about compensation on the interviews, but you now know, look, the median is 400. The 75th is 478. The 90th percentile is 528 for this many RVUs or this much in collections. And you should have this much vacation and this kind of signing bonus. And you have that. So when you ask them during the interview, how do you set compensation? When will I get an offer? You kind of have that in the back of your mind on what's fair. And if they say, hey, what we're thinking about making an offer, what are you looking for? You gotta not say, right? Even though you got the data, don't say 400, because they may be thinking, oh, sweet, we were going to say 4.25. We got them, right? And I don't want you to say 400, and then you call us and we say, look, based on the story, we think 4.25 makes sense. And then you call them and you say, hey, 4.25, and they say, what the hell? We agreed to 400. So, so I think getting us involved too early is better than too late. I think getting data too early is better than too late. I think having good questions to ask the right person is better too early than too late. When's the right time for the physician to look for a job? Don't know. I see some people signing out 2.5 years, and they feel good about it. Other people are like, I'm going to wait till the last minute because I'm unsure. And then I'm going to take a job and maybe only stick around for a year anyways. So whichever the physician feels comfortable with based on their story, which I think is very relevant. We could talk about how their story matters in session 2. But I think they can give us a call and start the process as soon as they like, for sure.
Yeah. I love what you said. I mean, it's no different than preventative care, right? I feel like, in this country, a lot of people get a symptom and then they like treat it after, right? So don't wait till you have a
Yep.
symptom in your contract, tail insurance, call, whatever it is, be proactive and be intentional about it in advance, just
I
like you would want your patients to do.
Yeah, I tell physicians, and you've probably heard me say this before, James, where I say a physician's number one asset. I don't think it's their. People can disagree with me, but I don't think it's their 401k. I don't think it's their fancy house. I don't think it's I think it's their. I think it's their ability to earn a lot of money every single year for decades on
Absolutely.
end, right? An athlete can earn a lot of money, but they can earn it till they're 27 sometimes, maybe till they're 30, maybe till they're 40 if they're lucky. But a physician, I mean, they get if they're a traditional grad, not a non-trad, they can work and practice for. I mean, I've got one of my good buddies. He came out of training as a surgeon, I think 28. I mean, he's 40. He's been practicing for 12 years, making good money. He's got. I mean, he could work for another 20 or 30 years, right? And I think their number one asset is their ability to earn a fantastic income. And I think not having that checked up, just like having my cholesterol checked every single year, although I'm 46 and remotely healthy, I get my cholesterol checked every year. And, I get my oil checked in my car every so often. And, I get an FEV1 test every so often. And, I go through the process, right? Because my health is a big thing for me. And I think a physician's income, assuming, is a big thing for them, and he or she should have that checked up often. And that's what that compensation package that we offer is all about. It's not even $300, not a contract with you, but it's just fantastic. And so whether you're an established physician and you just want to know, am I paid fairly? Again, paid a lot is different than fairly, which we can talk about next time. But whether you need that or a contract review, they can find us at Contract Diagnostics. We love doing this stuff. It's our passion. And can't wait to chat with you all again.
Yeah, John, thank you so much for being here. I was going to say, where can people find you? But I would say just go to contractdiagnostics.com, the
Just look.
compensation RX. He's on
Yeah.
Instagram. I've been sharing some of his stuff. John, you're just nothing but entertaining, but also a
We're
ton of
easy to find.
wisdom. Yeah, yeah. And if you got to jump off, I know John has to get to one of his kids' events,
Yeah.
so feel
I
free
gotta
to
go to
jump
an event.
off.
Yeah, that
Jeff and
sounds
I
good.
can wrap
But
it
hey,
up.
I had a great time, gentlemen. I look forward to seeing this released, and I look forward to doing another one and another one and another one. Sounds fun to me.
Yep, we'll do
All right,
it.
gentlemen.
Thank you, John.
Episode
For now.
100. Thank you. Bye for now. All right, everybody. That was absolutely epic. John is amazing. Jeff is also amazing. Jeff, any last thoughts, or you want me to just wrap it up and we can leave a little cliffhanger for everybody?
I guess the only thing that I would like piggyback on was at the very beginning when John was telling that horror story about tail insurance. That's a very real thing. Like, this was years ago, James, before you and I even met. I had a client that had like hired me in about like 2014, 2015. It was a private practice surgeon who had moved across the country in 2008. And you remember what the world looked like in 2008. That surgeon got hit with a big 6-figure invoice for tail coverage. Unfortunately, because didn't know that was a thing in their contract, was not necessarily sitting around on a bunch of liquid available cash to write a check for about $200,000, and had to liquidate some of their 401k to do that. And so
That is
it
crazy.
was at a time where the market, anybody that was invested for growth at that time, arguably maybe down about 40%. So say that $200,000 probably cost anywhere around like 350 to 400k of like cash.
Wow.
Liquidate the cash, pay tax, pay income tax, and pay penalties on it, and be liquidating at a loss. So it might have been the equivalent of like $500,000 to pay $200,000 bill. So
Wow.
it's a real deal kind of thing to understand how that works. And another reason why to just have somebody looking real closely at the details. And John is a wizard at the details for sure.
John is I have been absolutely blown away since I have met John, with just the kind of person of integrity he is, and just how great he is, and just his wisdom. So seriously, go check him out, support him. Contract Diagnostics. The compensation RX program, like he said, is $300, which is like unbelievable to get a compensation check. So go check that out. If you're thinking about a contract review or you want their team to review it for you, they have that right on their website as well. And I also was inspired from today's podcast. I need to, Jeff, hold me accountable to this, and listeners. If you're listening to this, you already have it, hopefully. So yeah, I'm declaring before this podcast is launched, I'm going to have a list of questions prepared that you can go online and download and follow along and use in the podcast. So we're gonna do our best to make that happen. And then some of the other topics, like cliffhanger for you guys, it might not be as good of a cliffhanger as like your favorite Netflix show, but I'll do my best. We're going to talk about compensation and bonuses in a future conversation with Jon. We're going to talk about lifestyle and burnout prevention and what that looks like within your contract. We're going to talk about negotiation tactics and leverage. I mean, even what came out of today, we could probably produce like 7 other shows, like locums, specific contract, all the things, right? So we're going to have some fun having Jon on the show. Go support him. Thank you so much for being here. Jeff, are you anything else? You feeling good to go?
Oh, that was awesome, man. And looking forward to having Jon back.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, thank you all for your time and attention as always today. And if you're with me right now, as always, take out a pen, piece of paper, your journal, notes app on your phone, and write down what is 1 to 3 action items that you will take in the next 24 hours. And then feel the fear and go do it anyways. And please share your success stories with us. And we'll see you for the next episode of A Life Well Lived, A Physician's Guide to Wealth. Thank you.
Awesome, man.